that we'll be recording. There you go. Magic recording thing. So just click OK there, and you'll continue joining us. Here's what we're doing today. Again, welcome to folks who are just coming in to LA Forward's January monthly meeting featuring Kenneth Mejia. What we're going to be doing today, we're going to do a little bit of overview of our organizing strategy for 2023. Of course, many folks here are interested in what LA Forward is doing because we are here to create a more fair and flourishing LA for everybody. And so part of that means organizing people power. We want to be transparent about the work that we're doing so that you can join in or get other folks to join into our organizing strategy as well. We're going to share a few more things that we're doing at LA Forward before Controller Kenneth Mejia joins us. When Controller Mejia joins us, I'm going to share in a little bit. We're going to have some questions for him. David Levitas, who's our executive director, is going to do about 15 minutes of questions with Kenneth. But then I am also going to be collecting your questions in the chat box as well, and then facilitating about 10 minutes of your Q&A with Controller Mejia. So, start getting your questions ready in your head. I'm going to collect those questions. And after the initial conversation with our executive director, David Levitas, I'll begin to share some of your questions out loud with Controller Mejia. Just on your screen on the left-hand side, this is a ballot filling party that we had in Alhambra. Of course, Alhambra folks could not vote for an LA city person like Controller Mejia, but we were doing work all over the county as well. So just want to make sure that if you're on the call and you're not in LA city, that we're also doing things on your behalf. So I just want to summarize really quickly where we left off in 2022. We pushed really hard in the 2022 elections, and some of you were part of a lot of these different endeavors. First of all, we released voter guides in the primary and general, and cumulatively between both of those elections, about 150,000 folks clicked onto our primary and general voter guides and spent somewhere around like 6 minutes on the page, meaning like folks were actually looking for information, whether they were printing it out or just taking a look at it, cross-referencing or something else. What we know we are doing at LA Forward is supporting Angelenos across the board to be more civically engaged. And that was clearly in an electoral cycle. People are looking for guidance for how to vote, who to vote, that kind of thing. But we're not stopping there and informing voters. We know that there are plenty of folks who are not going to be those 150,000 folks to click onto a website and view a voter guide. We know we needed to reach people at their doors and over the phone as well. And so many of you came to any of our virtual rallies, maybe our in-person events for Measure ULA. We canvassed throughout the West Side in particular for Measure ULA, but also created election pods where folks were able to gather with a small community of folks near them to be able to canvass together or do phone banking together for candidates that were directly impacting their jurisdiction. And then, of course, we did have endorsements. We made sure to curate residents in the various districts where there were city council races, county races, et cetera. And we formed committees of about 20 folks each for each of those different endorsement processes, endorsed candidates, and you see some of them on your screen. Some of them you may recognize actually did win their seat. And so we built relationships with progressive candidates and campaigns, won those seats. And now the question is, what are we going to do next? And so here's a little bit, again, of the raising of that curtain, just so you sort of know where we're headed with our organizing work. And again, part of this is about making sure that if you want to get involved, that you do get involved. And I want to share a little bit in a moment about how you can plug in. In fact, David, if you could put into the chat box laforward.org/calendar, where people can sign up for events that we're already beginning to put out there for folks. But you can see that overall, we know that strong organizing, strong people power means acting beyond electoral cycles. A democracy does not exist by voting alone. A democracy is really going to exist when we, the people, are in power and leverage the representatives we've elected to represent us. And what that looks like is co-governance, right? Even though there's somebody there who's attending city council meetings, who is there voting, it is us as people gathered together and organized, working alongside those folks that is going to tell them how to vote for things or what policies to introduce, what motions to make. This is what we're working toward. And sort of for this first quarter of the year, from January through March, we're going to take a few steps to begin working toward co-governance with our city council members and LA City in particular. So here's the 3 things we're going to be doing in many city council districts over the next few months. And then I'm going to get specific and tell you what we're doing in specific city council districts so that you can think about what you want to do for yourself and how you want to get involved. So first and foremost, we're not going to schedule a meeting with a city council member right away. We want to create opportunities for residents to gather, get to know each other, and identify points of connection that they want to prioritize for a city council office. So you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the first thing we're going to be doing is creating opportunities for residents to build relationships with each other and gather and find alignments and differences among their priorities. And then in that particular meeting, that first convening, we're going to align on a path forward together that will eventually get us to actually meet with city council members that represent that group of people. The second step in the middle of your page is this might be a new process for some folks. Meetings with city council members or understanding city council might be a step beyond the activism that folks have taken in the past. Maybe I've only been a voter in the past and I've never met with a city council office before. So we want to make sure to differentiate those opportunities for anybody who is new to civic engagement beyond an electoral cycle. So we'll hold trainings and opportunities for folks to get prepped to meet with a city council office. And so that you can expect that a lot of that is probably going to happen in February or so. And then we'll hold meetings to actually prep for the meeting to meet with a city council member. What we want to make sure happens during these city council meetings is that everybody who is coming together is aligned with what we want to get out of that meeting. And so we got to get organized, not just as a group of people, but organized in our approach to a particular opportunity to meet with a city council office. And then finally, of course, we are going to actually meet with city council offices. But again, we're not going to start there up front. We want to build those relationships first, ensure everybody is aligned on what they're about to walk into and best practices for what those meetings might look like. And then in that meeting, the hope is that we are exchanging priorities with our particular city council representative. So they might have priorities that they understand right away because they have some insight of whatever's happening on the inside. We want to let them know our priorities as well. And there's an exchange of not just priorities, but we want to figure out what is the pressing exchange of power that we can make happen here. Because we as people have power to be allies and supporters of things that this particular city council member wants to be able to accomplish that we're aligned on. But we're also going to hold that person accountable to our people power when they want to go in a direction that doesn't feel representative of the city that we want to create. And so in that meeting, that's a negotiation, an exchange of power that we want to arrive at. And then afterwards, when we leave that particular meeting with a city council member, we're going to debrief, of course, and figure out how we want to proceed in that particular city council district. But we also want to make sure that we're sharing that information with other organized groups that are organizing in other districts. So for example, if you're in Council District 5, whose city council member is Katie Young-Yaroslavsky, and you leave a meeting understanding her priorities and how she's reacting to your priorities, we're going to share that information with the group of folks in CD13 that met with Hugo Soto Martinez, the new city council member there, and share whether there are priorities that are aligned with his office as well. Because at the end of the day, to move anything through city council, you're going to need more than just your city council representative's vote. So the idea is to organize by district and then zoom back out and see where we have alignment across districts for the possibilities of organizing across the board. So here's where this is going to happen very specifically. And if you know, I think this graphic is kind of wiggly. So I'm going to encourage you to look from left to right on this particular screen graphic. This basically outlines the different dates or where we are in progress of scheduling various first conversations in different city council districts. Again, the first conversations are not actually with the council member. The first conversation is amongst residents of that particular district. So you can see that we're beginning to jump into this journey. And if you are in Council District 5, which is the Fairfax area, working your way west to Westwood and then up north of Westwood. And your new city council member is Katie Young-Yaroslavsky. We're hosting a gathering on Thursday, January 26th, as you can see there, from 6 to 7:30. It's being hosted by an LA Forward volunteer who is in district. So the meeting is in district. It's a potluck style kind of thing. And so if you are interested in joining us for that particular gathering because you are in district, you'll click on laforward.org/calendar. And on that calendar, click on the event that's on Thursday, January 26th. If you're not in that district, don't worry, I'm going to keep representing where organizing is across the board here. On Sunday, January 29th, so a weekend afternoon at 4 p.m., we're going to be gathering in LA, just outside of LAX in Westchester, to gather in the backyard of a resident who is offering CD11 residents the opportunity to gather. In CD11, we have a really interesting particular opportunity here where the person we endorsed, Aaron Darling, did not win the seat. Instead, the new council member there is Tracy Park. And so the group of residents gathering in this area will need to decide whether or not, and whether they do, if how they'll be developing a relationship with that office or how to proceed with organizing in that area. Because the person that we endorsed did not actually get into that seat of power. So if you are in CD11 and you are interested in that particular work, you can join us again. Click on that link that's in the chat box. David, if you can put it in again for anybody new who has joined us since, click on that and sign up for the 29th. For Council District 4, we have Council Member Nithya Raman, who was not elected this particular round, but instead was elected 2 years ago. And so she's 2 years into her particular term right now, but we still want to make sure that we're organizing in her district. And so on Tuesday, the 31st, we'll be gathering in her particular area. We do still need a location for that particular organizing meeting. We have some leaders who are willing to start co-facilitating, turning out folks to that area. But if you live in CD4 and are interested in helping us either host or identify a location to gather residents on that day, please let us know. I see that there's a hand. I'm going to come to questions in a moment, and you can feel free to put questions in the chat box as well, but I do just want to finish naming some of these opportunities. If you are in Council District 1 and your council member is Eunices Hernandez, or Council District 13 and your council member is Hugo Soto Martinez, we are currently assembling leadership of a core group of folks who will host the first meeting. And so if you are interested in helping us bring together residents to work toward a particular meeting that will help set up with Councilmember Hernandez and Councilmember Soto Martinez probably around March, email me. My email address is on there at godfrey@laforward.org, because we are beginning to assemble those groups of leaders that will schedule an initial convening for residents. And then, of course, in Council District 14 and Council District 6, we have really unique situations right now. In Council District 14, we have called for the resignation of current council member Kevin De Leon. He hasn't budged, even though the president has even asked for him to step down. What we know is true is that we believe that there will be some pretty well-resourced recall efforts coming up, and we will amplify those opportunities to collect signatures and recall Councilmember Kevin De Leon. So that's a little bit of a different organizing endeavor. There's a very specific call to action there that we will release when things are organized to be able to bring folks into that. And then, of course, in Council District 6, that is former Councilmember Nuri Martinez's seat. Of course, she did step down after leaked audio leaked in October. And so currently there are 7 folks who have filed and qualified to run that race. And I believe there are actually some write-in candidates as well who are joining in to the Council District 6 race. And so right now we are starting to create an endorsement process around that. And so when there are opportunities to plug in to Council District 6 and the election there, we will release that particular set of possibilities and loop you all in. To Connor's question in the chat box, and this is if you don't fall into any of the council districts that are in the area but live in LA and have a city council member, we are looking to you to help us provide the energy to build in your communities. We've started with these districts because of the relationships we have with those council members and the leaders that have stepped up in our volunteer community to begin organizing in those particular spaces. Right now, we're kind of limited in that I, as deputy director, am sort of supporting all of the organizing right now. and so we are looking for energy from additional leaders to be able to organize in all the different districts. So if you're asking about CD3, I see Aura asking about CD10, for example, we are looking for leadership to help gather in those communities. Kiernan is asking about candidates filing in CD6. The filing deadline is passed. So right now we know there are 7 candidates that have qualified in CD6, but there is an opportunity, it seems, for some write-in candidates to add their names in as well. I think, I know Theo has had his hand up for quite some time. Sorry, do you have a question? And then I know that Controller Mejia will be joining us in 5 minutes, and I want to make sure we get through a couple of things.
I do. And Happy New Year's to you, and good to see you and everyone else. Yeah, thanks. My question is, even though I know I should keep up with this type of thing, because I'm an advocate for the homeless, so this is important, but I haven't, and I don't know what district I live in. Yes. So how would I, go about determining which district I do live in? And my second question is, as to someone who said, what happened to District 10? So if that is not on there, could anyone go to any one of the other gatherings?
Yes. So let me answer your 2 questions, Theo. And thank you for your question. To David's question, David's link in the chat box, you can find your council district there. If you click on that link and input your address, you should be able to find who your current council representation is. This is part of the education work, of course, of organizing, is even determining where you live. What's been confusing about this, of course, is in 2021, new lines were introduced just to follow up on different census population analysis, right? Because as the population grows or changes in different areas, the boundaries of the districts are redrawn. And so, what you thought you were in 2 years ago may not be true anymore. So double check if you're not sure who your council representation is by clicking on that particular link. Theo's second question was, can you go to any of these gatherings if you do not live in that particular area? I'm going to guide against that. Like, the hope is, of course, to actually gather residents together to meet with their representation. And that's who particular council members are going to be most interested in hearing from. So we want you to go to the one that fits you the best residentially. However, we want to make sure that everybody is looped in. And so you can imagine that after we have an initial set of meetings with council members, that we will have some sort of larger assembly, maybe a monthly meeting similar to this, to be able to report out like what we've learned from the various meetings, et cetera, so that there's an opportunity for the larger LA Forward community, even if you don't live in LA, to find things out. I know Controller Mejia is going to join us in just a few moments, so I just want to highlight a few more opportunities quickly. A couple of things. We're talking about 15 city council seats right now, but there's a lot of conversation about how we district our boundaries and how do we do that independently. The leaked audio displayed to us the amount of power that city council members wanted to wield in the creation of districts. And we want to make sure that they are not that powerful, because then they can be influenced by money and other powers that be in order to create boundaries that are self-serving and are racist. And so what we want to do is push toward the idea of independent redistricting, explore that. And along with that is the possibility of expanding the number of city council seats. What if we didn't just have 15? What if there were more? So communities weren't fighting for attention between just the only 15 council members that existed. And so we're working toward some coalition efforts that will potentially bring people together to explore those particular policies and move them forward. That's what you see up there on top. The second thing we're doing is for folks in the SGV and then folks in LA, you can see we have 2 different opportunities to support more rigorous housing advocacy and leadership. in our areas. Something that holds us back from being more effective activists and organizers and advocates is we may not have the language around planning or land use that many folks who are more experts about housing have. And we want to be able to pair our lived experiences and how we're able to talk about our experiences with the policies that are coming to the desks of city council members, mayors, et cetera. And so we are creating a cohort called the Housing Leadership Academy, the first with a San Gabriel Valley focus, so thinking about small cities, and then the second thinking about LA at large, to be able to create fellowship amongst Angelenos and SGV residents, to be able to build that knowledge together and to better our skill set around advocacy around those particular policies as well. So if you're curious about that, you see on the screen the link, and if you could put that in the chat box, David, in case there is anybody here in the SGV, we are collecting interest now around the San Gabriel Valley Housing Leadership Academy in particular. And then of course, all of this is only possible right now with the support of folks like you. It's not just the people power and your involvement that make this go round. It's actually your financial sustainability that you contribute to this endeavor. We depend on monthly memberships to be able to juggle as many organizing endeavors as we are doing, to create opportunities for folks to come together, to frankly, to staff LA Forward as well. I am one of 3 staff members, and I just recently joined in July. And so to actually build capacity behind all of this work, consider becoming a sustaining member, which means starting a monthly membership donation that could easily be as little as $1. For example, and of course, if you can afford more, please do contribute more. So David's just put that link in the chat box as well. All right, well, in a moment, we should be joined by Controller Mejia, who confirmed earlier this hour that he will in fact be on board. So we're just waiting for him to sign on. If you haven't taken the time to do so yet, you see at the bottom of your screen social media handles for LA Forward. It is different on Instagram versus Twitter versus Facebook. And so this is where you can get just more current updates about what we're up to or how to jump into different organizing meetings, depending on whatever social media platform you might be on. Just by virtue of being on this call, you should be getting big emails from us that sort of outline the opportunities. But here's what's coming up for Controller Mejia. He's actually in the waiting room right now, and I'm about to let him in. What's going to happen is our executive director, David Levitas, is going to moderate an initial 15-minute conversation with Controller Mejia, just about his transition, how things are going so far, all of that. And then, as you have questions, I already saw one came in, put them in the chat box. I am going to collect them. And then in about 15 minutes or so, when David passes back to me, I'll facilitate some of the questions that you all have put forth, knowing that if you all send lots of questions, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. So that's all from me. David, anything to add before we jump to you and Controller Kenneth Mejia?
No, just to say, it is, that for folks who are interested in becoming members, it's really transformative for us. More than 50% of our C4 budget comes from monthly members, and we also give a special role to members in voting on endorsements. And for folks who are active and who are monthly members, get to participate in endorsement votes. So really encourage you to go on and consider becoming a member if you're not already. And and really excited to welcome LA Controller Kenneth Mejia. Welcome. Let me make sure your spotlit. That's the right word. You got it. I
got him. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. Great. Thank you so much, Controller, for being here. Really appreciate it. And we have about 15 minutes to chat, and then we'll kind of go into some questions. So let me just get right into it. As the executive director of LA Forward, I'm just curious. We endorsed you. We're really excited to see your victory. Really overwhelming victory. Just want to know, how are you? How is it going so far? We can't hear you.
How about now? Great. Well, I just want to say thank you, David. Thank you, Godfrey, LA Forward, for inviting me. Thank you for supporting me and our campaign as well. How are things going? Things are going amazing. It is a wonderful, wonderful job working on serving the city, especially with a specific area, which is around financial transparency, but also transparency on how the city's operating. And I get to work towards that and providing that every single day. So that's what I wanted to do. That's what we did in our campaign. And it's been really good so far.
Well, I'm curious. That was a softball. Here come the harder hitting ones. No, in all seriousness, I'm curious. They say a famous quote: "You campaign in poetry and govern in prose." I'm curious, what you're learning as you've taken office, as you prepare to take office, and you've taken office, and how has it shifted what you intended to do, or shifted your plans around maybe doing things a little bit differently than you initially intended? How is it not reshaping your goals, but how is what you're learning? What are you learning, and how is it, shaping what you're planning to do?
Right. So I think the good thing about our team is that a large majority of our team came from our campaign. So it feels like it's just a continuation of what we were doing. Right. When we were in the campaign, we were already providing data transparency and providing information to the city. I think the biggest difference now is we have information and data at the tip of our hands. And, instead of sending a California public records request that takes months to get a response, I can get a response in a day or a week, just a lot faster now. So now that we get more information, now we can put things out more timely. I think one of the biggest things, can you guys hear me? I think one of the biggest things is that data is not readily available or transparent in a way where it's released in a fast manner. So we're working to do that. So it's actually been really good. I think as a politician or controller, you also balance out your lives from before, as an activist, you sort of still have the activist spirit, but now you're providing, you're making change in a different way now. And I think that's how I see ourselves now, as we're bringing that change through inside. So it's been good. We have good mentors like Rick Cole, he's our chief deputy controller, James, our chief of staff. So we just have a good working relationship with everything so far.
Great. Is there anything, I'm always curious, is there anything that's unexpected or surprising since you've taken office that you didn't realize about? You were already doing a lot of data transparency work before you took office, but anything about being in office that just like totally surprised you, or just, wasn't expected about how the city worked or didn't work?
Well, how people say the city has a lot of red tape, or they have a lot of steps in order to get something. Definitely agree. There are a lot of hurdles, and the city hall bureaucracy. There's a lot of that. So when you think like something should be quick or something should be a certain way, but it's like, actually no, you have to do this, you have to ask this, you have to, it's like 10 steps instead of it being one step. That's something that I realized big time. And maybe it's because our goal is to provide efficiencies and effectiveness. So I'm definitely seeing a lot of that, and we're hoping to change that, right? We're hoping to make processes more streamlined and faster. So those are just some things that I've seen so far that people told me about on how the city works.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'm curious, what are you seeing? You came in with a very clear agenda, but what are you seeing as kind of the big challenges in front of you this next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? What are you seeing as the big opportunities? Maybe those overlap, maybe not. What are the big challenges and opportunities that are facing you as you've kind of taken office?
I think the big challenge is that we're trying to do a lot of work, especially around very important issues that we ran on: homelessness, public safety, housing, animal services. But we don't have a lot of people on our staff. So, we're filling up our executive team with people who aren't doing the work. Usually when you're a politician, you have an executive team that's like filled with people who handle the public facing stuff. So you have multiple comms people, you have multiple government affairs people. And for us, it's, we're hiring, people who can essentially help us with audits, right? Because we don't have that many auditors. And so those are some of the biggest challenges. So from a structural standpoint is we don't have that many auditors. I think we only really have around 6. So if you think about it, 6 auditors to do an entire city or 40 plus departments, you can only get 2 audits done in 6 months or a few months, right? And so what we're doing on the executive team side is we're filling people who can help us with that, right? So that's one of the big issues and challenges, is trying to do all the work and all the stuff that we promise with whatever we have. So we're running very lean. But there's a lot of great opportunity too, right? I think being a CPA and being skilled in finance, on the financial transparency side, we are working very fast to provide financial transparency, especially on homelessness spending. So I think that's one big area and opportunity that we're going to have soon. I know many people want to know how much we're spending and what we're spending on for Mayor Bass's homelessness emergency. And our office is taking, the initiative to bring that transparency. So there's a lot of great opportunity to come. And, it's just been us talking with a lot of different departments and offices on how we can work together to achieve that.
Yeah, thank you. No, appreciate you sharing all that. I'm curious, this is more of just like a background question, but people might not know, and I'm not sure it was really covered in the campaign too much, of like, how big is the controller's office? So like, and who, most of the employees are not, politically appointed. Yes, they're mostly civil servants, right? So
Right.
How large is the office, and what is the staff, like what are the divisions of labor like, and how much are you able to shift things around of what people are working on, and who's working on what?
Correct. So the controller's office has around, we're authorized to have around 170 plus employees, but we have about a 20% vacancy right now. So we have around 150 or so. The way it's broken down in the controller's office is we have 4 divisions, and then we have the executive team. So the executive team is myself and 13 others, and those are people that I get to pick. We have all our members on the executive side, and then on the 4 divisions we have our personnel management. So they handle, personnel, HR, the accounting of our specific department. You have the audit division. So those are our auditors. That's the ones that many people see and hear about the most. But like I said, we are very short staffed on auditors, and it's really hard to hire, not just in our auditors, but in the entire city. There's a 20% vacancy, and it takes forever to hire. And we also have the financial reporting and analysis division. So they help out with the accounting, the funds and appropriations, the financial statements that are about to be released. So the stuff that I used to do as a CPA. Then the 3rd division is our operations division. So like payroll, our 4th division. And so the operations division, they handle like payroll, paymaster, and making sure that everyone, gets paid, whether they're vendors or the city. So, it's there's 5 of us, executive team and 4 divisions. And it's about, like I said, 14 executive team and then 160 civil service. So people who are represented by unions. And there's really not much on the executive side we can change, but we can direct and guide on how we want to, how to lead our office. What are we looking at? So we actually work a lot with our civil service. I visit our civil service workers. We have, 2 times a week. So I'm out there walking around, and the employee's like, wow, I've never seen the controller before, or wow, like this is the 2nd time this week you saw me. And I give them donuts, I give them tours of our office. So it's been a lot of fun. And what we're trying to do is marry together the executive team, the front office, and the civil service. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, I appreciate it. It was comprehensive. So kind of 2 questions. One's about, how the public can get involved. The other is about, what else do you want us to know? So, I'm curious, how, in your efforts, like what do you need from the public? You kind of ran on I think probably one of the boldest controller campaigns the city's seen ever. So what do you need from us in terms of helping you do what you set out to do?
I think just keep putting on the pressure, pressure on elected officials, including ourselves to do better. Keep up that public pressure. We're trying to change things on the inside, right? And having that pressure on the outside helps, pointing to, oh yeah, did you see last week there were like 1,000 people saying they wanted transparency on this? It's like, hey, we can point to that. So I would just say, keep up the pressure, to fight for a systemic change on your officials. Get involved in organizations like LA Forward or others that do good work. That's also another way too. Mutual aid orgs as well. So yeah, I say that's what the public can do. And for us, I just want everyone to know that we're trying to do the most we can with as little staff and the team that we have. So just be patient with us, but we're working very hard.
Cool. I'm curious, you kind of shared a bunch already, but I'm curious, what else should people on this call, what else should progressives in the city, members of the public in general, like what else do people need to know about the city controller's office or efforts that they might not be getting now, either through the media or even through social media? What don't people know that they really should know?
I think people should know about, our department. Like I said, our audits take a couple of months. And like I said, we only have 6 really auditors to do some of these audits. So we're trying to make do with the amount that we have. So we're tackling and prioritizing issues to help. So around like homelessness or public safety, for example, but other things too, like, animal services or housing. I'm personally doing it myself, or another team member is helping us. So it's good that we're trying to do that. Everyone only really knows that the city controller is known for their audits, but we do a lot of work. We do payroll for over 40,000 employees, and I think that's something that should be highlighted for our team members. So I want to give them all a shout out. Our accountants, our people, our analysts who are making the city run, right? And I think a lot of people forget about that. We're also in charge of putting out financial reports as well that we're about to release next week about the fiscal health of the city for last fiscal year. So be on the lookout for that. We're trying to make a lot of open data more easily accessible and easy to use as well. So be on the lookout for that. And all the cool maps that we did in the campaign, we're gonna bring them back here. But now we have even more information. So we're very, very excited. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it that I want y'all to know. We're trying to make it more community oriented. So you can go on our website and some questions, and we do weekly updates just so everyone knows what the controller's up to. Because like you said, not a lot of people know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting. You actually kind of answered one of my questions, which is like, what's going to happen to all the open data and the maps and all that? It sounds like it'll be in a new location. It'll be on the controller's website eventually.
Right. So basically what we're doing with all the old data is we're trying to get more updated information, because that was from 2020, 2021 when we were running, and we're trying to get more updated info and now make it more streamlined. So our goal is to create the technology and infrastructure of these cool websites and these cool maps, and then hand it off to the city departments so that they can update it weekly, manually, so you guys have up-to-date information. What we want to do is make that blueprint of a good-looking website. I think the biggest issue with city websites is they're not visually pleasing, they're old, they're inaccessible, they're not mobile friendly. Well, let us help you take that first step in creating that, and then here, we hand it off to you. Now you enter the data. So
that's super. That's really cool. It's I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, I thought about the websites being kind of clunky, but interesting idea to kind of like create the kind of the template for the city department, and then just they have the data, and so they hopefully keep it up to date and cut out the middlemen. Great. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Godfrey for some questions. And yeah, really enjoyed our conversation. Godfrey, take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, David, and hello, Controller. Good to see you, and I'm super excited to bring you some of the 11 questions that folks have been DMing me and that I've been sorting throughout your conversation with David. I'm going to put them in clusters. You actually answered one of them already. Someone was interested, Justin was interested about whether you'll be updating the affordable housing map that you created and whether things will be put onto the controller website. You answered that just now about how you all are transitioning that. But there were additional questions around housing and homelessness in particular. And two that I'll uplift right now are Carly asks, what are you working on first as controllers as it pertains to the shelter system, in particular in the next 6 months? And then similarly, Theo asks, what would you think about adding a homeless advocate to the table? So if you could answer those two questions sort of in tandem, shelter priorities and homeless advocate to the table.
Yeah, so, I think for us, especially around homelessness, specifically around shelters, we would love to do more transparency and just let people know, more on a data standpoint, where are these shelters? What is the current vacancy or beds, or how many empty beds are there available? We also want to see visits and do conditions of these shelters, just so people understand the shelter system. And I think we also want to highlight that too through our visits and working with the organizations who run the shelters, just what exactly is the process on getting there. We're also trying to get updated information on shelter beds. I think the last count we had was from last year, so we're trying to get more up-to-date information on just what that number is, because I think a lot of people use, there's so many shelter beds available, but there's really no transparency or current information on that, right? And so we're working to get that info and make that available to the public. We just hired a director of homelessness, Ashley Bennett. She just started yesterday. She's from Ground Game. She was also from LASA. She does a lot of work with UTAC, the tenants, unhoused tenants. And so she is out there, connecting with stakeholders. And what we want to do is incorporate a lot of community members, especially those with lived experiences, to help us drive this sort of oversight work. And so just for everyone here, we're not policymakers. We're not, and I should have said this earlier, but one thing is we're not lawmakers. We also can't move budgets. We can't defund or increase funding for XYZ, but we can provide transparency and oversight, right? And that's sort of what we want to do. So, be on the lookout we haven't started any of those meetings yet, but we are going to, and include those, homelessness advocates.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. I'm going to keep going down this transparency route because people are interested in what you can do with transparency. And so some of the questions have been submitted. Someone said, Teresa says, Council Member Martinez had once said that the council's discretionary fund is confidential. If that is accurate, how can we change that? We want to see CD14's budget. Is that anything in your world at all? Being able to look into discretionary funds at all?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't not a big priority for us, just because, like I said, the amount of energy, time, and staffing to put on certain things takes a lot of time. So, but that's definitely something that's been brought up, is look into discretionary funding and how that works. So that's something we can look into. It just all depends. Like, we get a lot of requests and a lot of things to look into. Is just we don't have a lot of the capacity to dive deep into everything, right? And I think that's sort of like been the biggest issue, is just capacity and getting the answers for these questions, right? So yeah.
And someone asks, and you've said this as well, you've been interested in looking at the air support division, again, like the transparency around its finances and effectiveness. Is that also on hold because of capacity, or is that something that you've been able to get started, or how it would start?
Yeah, I mean, no, that's part of public safety, and that is definitely, in the area that we are looking into around public safety spending. So I'd say yes.
Great. Thanks for that. two different folks are really interested about how your office can support efforts toward equity in particular, and how we can take a look at data in ways that actually show that things are proceeding equitably or inequitably. In particular, someone asked, what efforts can your office push for in terms of racial data disaggregation in city sources and data?
Well, I think that's huge. I think our campaign tried to do that, right? We did a lot of maps and dashboards and analytics on information, right? So we created something for example, LAPD stops in 2021 that showed, you know, Black people getting stopped the most disproportionately, right, in comparison to their population. So that's information like that we've created before, so people can understand. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to pinpoint with city data just who's getting affected the most, where are people getting affected the most, by city council district, by neighborhood. We also did another analysis on green space, on park space in the city. And we found out that there were certain districts, you know, low income districts or communities of color had no park space. There was no green space, right? And with that analysis is we're hoping to show that and give our legislators the tools that they need so that then they can fight for that equitable, you know, for an equitable result, whether that's more housing, whether that's more green space, whether, you know, whether it's, you know, an abundance of police in their neighborhood, right? And that's sort of the tools that we can bring. But at the end of the day, it's really up to the mayor or the council to take that information, right? We can get a bullhorn and highlight stuff and blast it out to the media. But our hope is that you all as well get this information that we create, and then you push, like I said, you push your legislators to take the information we put out there and fight for more equity and resources for your community.
So you are a chief informant for the public, it sounds like in many ways. And so a couple of folks are really interested in the boundaries of your position. So like someone asked whether you could help it to advise how much money we should be asking Governor Newsom for extra support around homelessness based on the numbers that you have access to. And another person asked whether you could actually see if there's anything of note around federal funds that become available to the city, and whether you have a role in those as well. Could you sort of share with us where you see the overlap between state and federal levels as well beyond the city?
I mean, in terms of actual asking for money, and I think we're more, we could play a more of a front and center role, but I think right now it's more of a back-ended role. I think the CAO, the city administrative officer, definitely has helps guide those needs and those asks. But definitely, I mean, if we ever do an analysis and we figure out like, hey, actually, if we get $1 billion here, we can pay for X amount of units, or we can, you know, pay these people's rents, or we can get more service providers or more unarmed mental health clinicians or something. But you know, that's you know, we can do that, right? But at the end of the day, it's gonna be, we can give recommendations as much as we want, like, oh yeah, you should do this. But I think probably the mayor, CEO, and the legislators have a lot more pull. But we can provide, you know, analysis if we need to based on past numbers.
I think it's really telling, and this is just Godfrey commentary at this point, I think it's really telling how much people want to ask of you, because they see you as an ally to the work that we're doing on the outside right now. So people are wondering, you know, how much can you do for us right now, and given all the capacity that you do have, et cetera. One person brought back how much positivity and Pikachus you became synonymous with over your campaign. And they're wondering whether you feel like you're able to bring that energy of positivity and Pikachus into your office, or whether you're actually experiencing adversarial kind of attitudes instead, because now you have to handle accountability and all of that. Like, how can you answer that question?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we were campaigning, we were Pikachuing, we were corgis, we were having fun, dressing up casual. But no, I mean, once we took office, the first day, I told everyone, dress code is casual. People can work remote. You know, people it's a very, very, like, you know how people don't want to go to the office to work because they just dread driving or just going to inside the office. Everyone wants to work remotely. Our executive team comes to the office like every day, and they don't have to. I think that's how amazing our team is at working together, that we just love coming to the office. I'll work like 10 or 14 hours a day just because I love it. Like I'll work on the weekends too if I need to, just because I love the fact that I'm getting closer and closer to providing more information and transparency to the city. But definitely, you know, I still wear my Crocs. People know me for wearing Crocs. We're casual. We're dress code's informal. We have cool lights in our office. We have cutouts of corgis on the walls everywhere. So no one's gonna change us. You know, we're changing City Hall to be more accessible and welcoming, especially to a younger generation. And you know, I think people really appreciate that, because sometimes this work that we do can be not welcoming at all to the next generation.
Thanks for that. I have one more sort of like really substantive thread of questions that they just keep coming in. People are really interested in auditing around housing in particular. And I think you've kind of echoed like some of this is going to take a while, like we need to build the capacity for it. But what can the city controller do to audit LA housing department in particular, possibly for misspent funds or uses of money from the past, things like that? Just anything, any last thing to say around that before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, around housing, we definitely, like I said, we want to. So the goal for all 40 plus departments is to build websites, dashboards of transparency, so that people can understand the metrics that these departments are performing on, whether they are reaching their performance metrics, whether they're internal metrics or there are metrics or the public's metrics. So we want to make that information known. I say this because we're starting with like those 4 departments that I mentioned. So, or those 4 issues, and that includes homelessness, that includes public safety, that includes housing, and that includes animal services. So, you know, on the housing front, I have a list of questions that I want to ask and get the numbers and information so I can make that transparent. And I think from there is then when we can, once we get that information back, then we can dive in to see, well, what are our tax dollars being spent on? So definitely we could perform performance audits on any department just to see, you know, what is their role? What are they doing? Housing specifically, are they protecting tenants? How are they addressing, you know, landlord harassment of tenants? How long does it take for them to respond to a call or something like that? You know, other things too we can look at is how often are property managers who are getting incentives from the city, you know, carrying their responsibility of renting out their low-income units to people? Are they advertising those low-income units? Is there discrimination? So those are some things that, you know, I'm looking into as well. So definitely that, and the housing department is on our list. We've actually been, you know, attending a lot. We've been attending meetings with the housing department to understand the work that they do, especially around tenants. And also, you know, like what we did in the campaign, where we built a map of all the affordable housing in the city of LA. We're trying to get an updated list so that we can provide that to people so that they can apply for those affordable housing. And that revolves around the housing department. So, you know, there's just a lot. And so I think there's just so much to do, and we're already starting to dip our feet in there right now. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for not just juggling all of that work that needs to be done, but also being here tonight to let us know sort of what the plan is, so that we can hold you accountable to that work, and also kind of know the boundaries of where your priorities are right now. How can people stay in touch with you before you head out today? What's the best way to keep up with the controller's office?
Yeah, I mean, our website is awesome. So if you go to if you go to our website, you can pretty much find on the very bottom where all of our information's at, and you can send Q&As. You can be on the know about like when we are doing our next Twitch update. So I do Twitch updates, and I do weekly 1-minute like wrap-ups of the week. So social media is another way too to stay in touch and see what we're up to. But yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun, and I think the hard part too now is when you're trying to do community engagement as the controllers, you get a lot of specific questions. Kenneth, how much did we spend on this? How much did we spend on this? Kenneth, how many orgs are here? And it's like, that's the hard part, is trying to juggle all that while you're trying to do like your audits and you're doing your transparency. So, that's been really, really difficult, is just, and we love it. Like, I'm not telling everyone to stop, but we get hundreds of questions and it's just they're very specific questions, right? So we're getting to people, but, I just want to let people know how it is here, and how we're trying to deal with it. So we're doing our best while trying to be out there in the front line. So, yeah.
And thank you for all that education work. I know we're past time at this point and we're seeing some folks needing to jump out. So thank you so much for joining us today, Controller Mejia. I know 2 years ago, many of us had zero idea what the Controller's Office did. And now we're learning about how it works alongside you as well. And so we're all brushing up on what the public's role can be with all of this. Thank you for joining us. I know you see in the chat box where you can continue to track the Controller's Office. And again, I know we're at time, so just want to place these next steps for LA Forward folks on your screen once again. So in addition to keeping up with the controller, sounds like a reality show, you see the opportunities to get organized city council district by city council district through organizing with LA Forward. Again, want to plug our Housing Leadership Academy to be able to build in residents language around planning and land use, so that we can advocate for things that are going to be meaningful for our communities in ways that policy wonks also advocate for them. And then, of course, support the work by becoming a member of the work that we're doing and following us on social media. Thank you so much, Controller Mejia. David, any last words?
Thank you, Controller Mejia. Thank you, Godfrey, for all your great leadership. So glad to have you on the team as the Deputy Director. And thank you, everybody who already signed up as a member during this Zoom. I see a bunch came through. And if you haven't done it yet, please go do it now. You may not think it, but even $1 or $2 a month really makes a huge difference to us. It's really about the number of people who are members, not the amount that they give. So thank you for considering that. And thank you, everybody, for being here, and hope you all have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.